The warehouse stank of rust and motor oil and something else, something primal, fear maybe, or the sweat of men who knew they had made the worst mistake of their lives. Four men knelt in a line on the cracked concrete floor. Their hands were zip-tied behind their backs. Their faces were swollen and bloody, lit by the harsh flicker
This has
of
gone on
fluorescent
long
tubes
enough.
overhead.
What do you want
The
from
lights
me?
buzzed
To
and
face
stuttered,
reality. Now.
casting shadows that seemed to crawl across the walls like living things. Reese Callahan stood before them, 5'3", 118 pounds, brown hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. She wore jeans, work boots, and a flannel shirt rolled to the elbows. She looked like someone's daughter, someone's little sister. The kind of woman you might see working the register at a hardware store or teaching Sunday school at a small-town church. That was the point. In her hands, she held an M4 carbine. Standard issue, nothing fancy. She did not need fancy. Her boots echoed against the floor as she paced. Slow, deliberate, each step measured like a metronome counting down to something terrible. Dominic Brandt raised his head. Blood dripped from his split lip onto his white cotton shirt. Each drop made a small explosion of red against the fabric. When he spoke, his voice cracked like dry wood. "Please, I'm sorry. We were wrong." Reese stopped pacing, her eyes, green as a winter lake and twice as cold, fixed on him. She said nothing, just stood there, still as a statue, letting him drown in the silence. 10 seconds passed. 20. Then she spoke. Her voice was quiet, too quiet. "What did you say?" Dominic flinched. "I said we were wrong. We made a mistake." "No." Reese took one step closer. "When you broke my grandfather's rifle." "What were your exact words, Dominic?" He shook his head, eyes darting like a trapped animal. "I do not remember." "Break it." The words came out sharp as broken glass. "That is what you said. Break it. Show this little girl what happens when she does not cooperate." The man next to Dominic, a mountain of muscle named Ox Decker, let out a strangled sob. 300 pounds of violence reduced to a whimpering child. "We did not know," Bayestin, Ox whimpered. "We did not know who you were." Reese's jaw tightened. A vein pulsed at her temple. "You did not need to know who I was. You just needed to not be animals." She turned away from them, facing the darkness beyond the cone of light. Her reflection caught in a cracked window. A young woman, 27 years old. She had survived things that would break most men twice her age. She had killed in the service of her country. She had watched her entire team dean in a dusty street in Damascus and walked away the only survivor. And 3 days ago, 4 men had walked into her shop and treated her like she was nothing. "Let me tell you a story," she said, her voice carrying through the empty warehouse. "It starts 72 hours ago. It starts with you 4 walking into my shop like you owned the world." She turned back to face them. Something in her expression made all 4 men shrink away, pressing themselves against the concrete as if they could disappear into it. But really, it starts 15 years before that. November 3rd, 2011, the day my grandfather died. She paused. Or should I say, the day he was murdered. The morning of November 3rd, 2026, came to Callahan Armory the way it always did. The pale Nevada sun crawled over the eastern hills, turning the sky from black to purple to gold. The desert stretched in every direction, brown and empty and eternal. Route 95 cut through it like a scar, and the armory sat alone at the edge of nowhere, a monument to one man's dream of peace after 30 years of war. Reese Callahan had been awake for 2 hours already. 5-mile run at 4:30 in the morning. 200 push-ups, 300 sit-ups. The same routine she had kept since basic. The same routine her grandfather had taught her when she was 15 years old and angry at the world. A combat mindset does not turn off just because you run a gun shop in the middle of nowhere. She unlocked the front door at 7 sharp. The bell above it chimed, the same brass bell that had hung there since her grandfather opened the place in 1996, 30 years ago, back when he was a young retiree with calloused hands and a head full of memories he never talked about. The shop smelled like gun oil and old wood, familiar, safe. Reese walked to the back wall where the rifles hung in careful rows. Her fingers found the Remington 700 without looking. She did not need to look. She had been touching this rifle since she was 8 years old. Custom job, built in 1983. The stock was Brazilian walnut, dark and smooth from decades of handling. The grain ran lengthwise, strong and beautiful. The barrel had been upgraded twice over the years, the scope 3 times, but it was still the same rifle. She lifted it from the rack, feeling its weight settle into her hands like an old friend coming home. The engraving on the receiver caught the morning light. Break barriers, not promises. WC Master Chief, United States Navy. SEAL Team 2, William Callahan. The Hawk, they had called him. Because when he looked through a scope, nothing escaped his sight. Grenada, 1983. Panama, 89. Desert Storm, 91. 30 years of service to his country. A legend among legends. The kind of man other SEALs told stories about in hushed voices. The kind of man who had done things that would never appear in any history book, but had shaped the world nonetheless. Reese closed her eyes. 15 years today. 15 years since she had found him in his armchair, the newspaper still folded in his lap, his reading glasses crooked on his face, the television playing some old Western he had seen 100 times, his coffee cold on the table beside him. The doctor said heart attack, quick and painless, 77 years old, a good life, well lived. She had believed that for 15 years. She had believed it through her own military career, through SEAL training, through 2 tours in Syria and 3 in Afghanistan, through the silver star they pinned on her chest and the nightmares that came with it. She had believed it until 72 hours ago. The bell above the door chimed. Reese's eyes opened. Her body shifted automatically, not quite a tactical stance but ready, weight balanced, hands positioned, old habits carved into muscle and bone. A man filled the doorway, 6'2", maybe 6'3", early 40s, thick across the shoulders, shaved head catching the morning light. He wore a leather jacket despite the November heat, jeans and boots that had seen real work. His eyes swept the room in one practiced glance, cataloging exits and angles the way only soldiers and criminals do. 3 more men filed in behind him, all cut from the same cloth. Rough, hard. The kind of men who had learned early that the world gave you nothing, and you took what you wanted or you went without. Reese set the Remington back on its rack, carefully, deliberately. "We are not open yet," she said. "Come back at 8. The big man smiled. It did not reach his eyes. "We are not here to buy, sweetheart." He looked around the shop, taking inventory. The rifles on the wall, the handguns in the glass cases, the ammunition stacked on shelves, the photographs on the wall behind the counter, showing a young William Callahan in dress uniform, shaking hands with men whose faces had appeared on the evening news. "Nice place you got here. Shame it is in the middle of nowhere." Reese's fingers drummed once against her thigh, a tell she had never quite broken. "If you are not buying, you need to leave." Dominic Brandt. He stuck out his hand like they were meeting at a church social. His handshake would be firm and dry, the handshake of a man who wanted you to know he was in control. "These are my associates, Ox, Thorn, Pike." Reese did not take his hand. Dominic let it drop, that fake smile still plastered across his face like a mask. "We are here about a business proposition. Some associates of mine are interested in acquiring property in this area, your property specifically. Not for sale. You have not heard our offer. Do not need to." Reese crossed her arms. She was giving away nothing. Her face was stone. Her eyes were ice. "I said not for sale. Now get out." Ox laughed, a wet, nasty sound that came from somewhere deep in his massive chest. "You hear that, boss? Little girl has got an attitude." "I can see that." Dominic took a step closer. Reese held her ground. 5'3" against 6'2", 90 pounds lighter, 20 years younger. None of it mattered, Wad. She had faced worse odds in places these men could not even imagine. "Let me explain something, Miss Callahan. Is it Miss, or are you married?" Silence. "Miss, then." He smiled again, and this time there was something predatory in it. "This is not really a negotiation. We are offering you $50,000 for this place and the land. That is generous considering your location." Reese's voice was quiet. $50,000? Cash. Today if you want it. For a property worth $800,000. For a business my grandfather built with his own hands. For the last piece of him I have left. She shook her head slowly. Sentimental value does not spend, sweetheart. Get out. Dominic's smile finally died. His eyes went flat and cold, like a shark's eyes. And for a moment, Reese saw the real man beneath the country club manners. This was a man who had hurt people, many people, and he had enjoyed it. You are making a mistake. No, Kyayi. Reese stepped forward, right into his space, close enough to smell his cologne, something expensive that did not match his rough edges. You made the mistake when you walked through that door thinking I was someone you could push around. For a second, just a second, something like respect flickered in Dominic's eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by something uglier. Calculation. Decision. He nodded to Ox. The big man moved fast for his size. 300 pounds of muscle crossed the shop in 2 strides. His hands that could crush a man's skull like a ripe melon, shot out and grabbed the Remington 700 off the wall rack. Reese lunged for it, but Thorne Vickers, the wiry one with dead eyes and a cigarette-stained smile, caught her arm and twisted it behind her back. Careful now, Thorne whispered in her ear. He smelled like cheap whiskey and old smoke. Would not want you to get hurt. Dominic held up the rifle, examining it in the light. His fingers traced the custom woodwork, the careful craftsmanship that had gone into every inch of it. Nice piece. Custom work. This the one your granddaddy used? Reese's heart hammered against her ribs, but her voice stayed steady. Put it down. Or what? Dominic's finger traced the engraving on the receiver. Break barriers, not promises. That is real touching. He was quite the shooter back in the day, I heard. The Hawk, they called him. Funny name for a dead man. Please. The word tasted like ash in her mouth. She had never begged for anything in her life. Not when the drill instructors broke her down in basic. Not when she held at her dying teammate in that Damascus street. Not ever. But this rifle was not just metal and wood. It was her grandfather's hands teaching her to shoot. It was his voice in her ear, patient and calm. It was every memory she had left of the man who had raised her when her parents died. That rifle, it is all I have. Dominic looked at Ox. What do you think? Should we keep it? Ox's grin showed too many teeth. Nah, let us break it. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. No. Reese thrashed against Thorne's grip, but Pike Jennings grabbed her other arm, and together the 2 men held her in place. Dominic slammed the rifle down on the counter. The sound cracked through the shop like a gunshot. The walnut stock held, barely. 40 years of craftsmanship resisting the impact. He lifted it again, brought it down harder. The stock splintered. Reese screamed, a raw animal sound that came from somewhere deep and primal, somewhere she had not known existed. Break it. Dominic said the words almost conversationally, like he was ordering coffee. Show this little girl what happens when she does not cooperate. Ox took the rifle, his massive hands that had once assembled M249 squad automatic weapons in under 2 minutes during his Army days, found the junction where receiver met stock. Brazilian walnut, 40 years old, grain running lengthwise, strong, but not against 300 pounds of perpendicular torque. For a moment, Reese saw her grandfather's hands on that same rifle, saw him teaching her to shoot when she was 8 years old, steadying her aim, whispering encouragement. Breathe, little bird. Between heartbeats, between breaths, that is when you take the shot. Ox twisted. The crack of breaking wood echoed through the shop like a bone snapping. The barrel bent. The scope shattered. The stock came away in pieces. Brazilian walnut reduced to kindling. They dropped it on the floor, kicked the pieces across the concrete. Reese stopped struggling. She just hung there between Thorne and Pike, staring at the wreckage. 40 years of history, 40 years of love and memory and meaning, gone in 10 seconds. Thorne released her arm. She did not move. Could not. Dominic crouched down, picking up a piece of the shattered stock. The engraving was still visible on the fragment. He held it up to her face. This is what happens, he said softly, when people do not understand the way things work. Reese's eyes focused on his. For the first time since they grabbed her, she looked directly at him. What Dominic saw in those green eyes made him take an involuntary step back. It was not fear. It was not shock. It was not even anger. It was calculation, cold, precise, military calculation. the look of a predator deciding exactly how it was going to kill its prey. "You come back here in 1 week," Dominic said, trying to regain his composure. His voice was not quite as steady as before. "You will have the paperwork ready to sign. 50,000 cash. Or next time it will not be just a rifle we break." He dropped the piece of wood, ground it under his boot. "Let us go, boys." The four men walked out. The bell chimed cheerfully as the door swung shut behind them. Reese stood there for 5 minutes. 10. Then she bent down and picked up the pieces of her grandfather's rifle. One by one, she laid them on the counter like a body on a slab. Her hands did not shake. Her eyes did not water. Navy SEALs do not cry. Her grandfather had taught her that too. But inside, something cold and dark and patient began to wake up. Reese pulled out her phone and stared at it for a long moment. 3 years since she had left the Navy. 2 years since she had spoken to anyone from her old life. She had walked away from all of it, from the missions and the medals and the memories that woke her up screaming at 3 in the morning. She had promised herself she would never go back. But some promises were made to be broken. She dialed a number she knew by heart and held the phone to her ear. It rang 3 times before a woman's voice answered, crisp, professional, with an edge that said this person had seen combat and survived it. "Callahan, I have not heard from you in 2 years. "Commander Blackwood." Reese's voice was steady, flat, the voice of a soldier reporting for duty. "I need to talk." A pause, then, "I'm listening." Reese looked at the broken rifle on her counter, at the words still barely visible on a fragment of wood. 4 men just walked into my shop. They broke my grandfather's rifle. They threatened to burn this place down. And I think this is about more than real estate." Another pause, longer this time. "Dominic Brandt." Commander Judith Blackwood's voice had changed, harder now, more alert. 42 years old, former Army Ranger, discharged in 2015 for theft of military equipment, currently under FBI surveillance for suspected arms trafficking. "Is that one of your 4 men?" Reese's grip tightened on the phone. "How did you know?" "Because I have had a flag on your location for 6 months. Because Dominic Brandt's organization has been buying up properties along Route 95 for the past year. Because your shop sits on the perfect piece of land for a smuggling operation. Remote, accessible, close to 3 state lines." The cold thing inside Reese's chest grew colder. "You have been watching me. I have been trying to protect you, trying to keep this away from you." Blackwood's voice softened slightly, just slightly. "But they came anyway. Which means someone knows who you are, who you were. Who I was is dead. I left that behind. Did you, or did you just bury it?" Through the window, the sun had fully risen now. The Nevada desert stretched out forever, brown and gold and empty. "Tell me everything," Reese said. So Blackwood did. She told her about the organization, about the network of former military and law enforcement running illegal weapons up and down the Western Corridor, about the FBI task force that had been chasing them for 18 months with nothing to show for it. She told her about the man at the top, the one they had not been able to identify, the one who had stayed a ghost for 3 years while his operation grew and spread like cancer. And then she told her the part that made Reese's blood run cold. "There is something else, something I found in the files." Blackwood's voice dropped. "Your grandfather filed a report with NCIS 2 weeks before he died, said he had witnessed illegal weapons being transported through Nellis Air Force Base, said he had evidence of corruption that went higher than anyone would believe." The room tilted. Reese grabbed the edge of the counter. The report was classified, buried. The investigator retired 6 months later and moved to the Cayman Islands. Very comfortably. Reese's knees felt weak. "Your grandfather died before he could provide his evidence." "No." The word came out as a whisper. "I am afraid so, and there is more." Blackwood paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was gentle in a way Reese had never heard before. "The medical examiner from Clark County is now living in Arizona, and he is willing to talk. Off the record. He says there were inconsistencies in the blood work, in the tissue samples, consistent with certain types of poison that mimic cardiac arrest." Reese slid down the wall behind the counter. The phone pressed to her ear, the world spinning around her. 15 years. 15 years she had mourned him. 15 years she had believed it was natural causes. A good death for a good man. All of it lies. Who? The word came out barely a whisper. That is what we need to find out. But Reese, the timing. Your grandfather files a report about weapons trafficking. He dies 2 weeks later. 10 years go by. Nothing. Then suddenly this organization appears. Same area, same roots. And now they want your land. They are connected. I would bet my pension on it. Blackwood paused. The question is, do you want to help us find out how? Reese looked at the broken rifle, at the words still barely visible on a fragment of wood. Break barriers, not promises. He had lived by those words. Died by them, apparently. What do you need me to do? Give me 3 days. Let me put a team together. But Reese, be smart about this. Be careful about who you trust. I will. Callahan, one more thing. Yes, ma'am. Blackwood's voice went hard as steel. Make them pay. The line went dead. That night, Reese sat alone in the dark shop, surrounded by the pieces of her grandfather's rifle. She could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Damascus. The narrow street, the dust in the air, the sound of automatic weapons fire coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. 6 of them had gone in. A simple extraction. In and out in 20 minutes. Nothing was ever simple. The ambush came from 3 directions. RPGs and small arms fire. Carter went down first, then Nguyen. Jackson took a round to the throat and bled out in Reese's arms. His eyes weaved and confused, like he could not believe this was happening. She had dragged Miller and Torres into a doorway, but Torres was already dead, and Miller was missing most of his left leg. She applied a tourniquet while rounds sparked off the walls around them. Miller lasted 4 minutes. He spent 3 of them telling her to leave him, to save herself, to get out while she still could. She stayed with him until the end. Then she picked up her rifle and fought her way out alone. 3 blocks of hell, 17 confirmed kills. A bullet grazed across her ribs that still ached when it rained. She had received a Silver Star for that day. The citation called her actions extraordinary heroism in the face of overwhelming enemy fire. She called it the worst day of her life. And now, sitting in the dark with the broken pieces of her grandfather's rifle, she understood something she had been trying to ignore for 2 years. She had not left the Navy because she was tired of fighting. She had left because she was afraid of losing anyone else. But you could not run from loss. It found you anyway. It broke down your door and shattered the things you loved and dared you to do something about it. Reese picked up a fragment of the rifle. The piece with the engraving. Break barriers, not promises. I am going to find out who killed you, Grandpa, she whispered into the darkness. And I am going to make them pay. The right way. The way you taught me. She held the piece of wood against her heart. I promise. The next morning arrived with heat that made the air shimmer like water. Reese stood in the parking lot at 6 in the morning, watching a dusty Chevy Silverado roll up the highway. The truck was old, dented in places, covered in a layer of desert dust. But the engine purred like it was brand new, because Garrett Callahan maintained his vehicles the way he maintained his weapons. Perfectly. The truck pulled in, the engine cut, the door opened. Garrett Callahan unfolded himself from the driver's seat, 58 years old, 6 feet even, lean as a whip, with the kind of wiry strength that never faded no matter how many years passed. His hair had gone silver at the temples, but his eyes, the same pale blue as his brother's, were sharp as ever. He had driven through the night from Arizona. 12 hours straight, he had not stopped once. He saw Reese and stopped, just looked at her for a long moment, taking in her face, the tension in her shoulders, the shadows under her eyes. Then he pulled her into a hug that lifted her off the ground. Little bird, he said into her hair. Jesus, kid. Reese hugged him back, breathing in the familiar smell of gun oil and Old Spice, the same smell her grandfather had carried. The smell of the Callahan men. Uncle Garrett, thanks for coming. You tell me someone broke Billy's rifle. He set her down, his jaw tight, his eyes hard. I would have driven through fire to get here. I needed time to think, to plan. Garrett studied her face. He had known her since she was a baby, had watched her grow from a skinny, angry teenager into one of the most decorated operators in SEAL history. He knew what she looked like when she was planning something. You have got a plan. Yeah, come inside. I will explain everything. They sat at the counter where Dominic Brandt had shattered her grandfather's rifle. The pieces still lay there, carefully arranged. Garrett picked up a fragment, his calloused thumb tracing the broken engraving. His face went very still. Tell me their names, he said quietly. Dominic Brandt, Ox Decker, Thorne Vickers, Pike Jennings. All of them? Every single one. She told him then everything. About Commander Blackwood's call, about the weapons trafficking, about the FBI investigation, and finally about the medical examiner who was willing to testify that William Callahan had not died of natural causes. Garrett's hands clenched into fists. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. They poisoned him. That is what the evidence suggests. And you think these bastards are connected? Same roots, same territory, too much coincidence. Reese leaned forward. Uncle Garrett, I need you for this. Someone I can trust absolutely. Someone who knew Grandpa. Someone who wants justice as much as I do. Garrett was quiet for a long time. Outside, the desert wind picked up, sending dust devils spinning across the parking lot. Finally, he looked up. What is the plan? We give them exactly what they want. I call Dominic, tell him I am scared, tell him I will sell. We arrange a meeting, and then we bug him, track him, follow the chain up to whoever is running this operation. Get enough evidence for the FBI to make arrests that stick. She paused. But more than that, I want to know who killed Grandpa. I want to look them in the eye. Garrett smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who had spent 30 years in the Marine Corps and had never quite left the war behind. You sound just like Billy. I will take that as a compliment. It is. He stood up, walked to the window. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly under the morning sun. You know what you are asking, right? This is not some training exercise. These men will kill you if they find out what you are doing. I know. And you are still going to do it. Yes. Garrett turned back to face her. His eyes were bright, fierce, alive in a way they had not been in years. Then I am in. This is your fight, little bird. I am just here to watch your back. The next arrival came 2 hours later. A silver Honda Accord, dust-covered from the long drive. Jenna Whitmore stepped out. Tall, athletic, dark hair cut short in a practical style that required no maintenance. She had the look of someone who had seen Tubom and learned to live with it. 34 years old, former Army intelligence discharged 3 years ago for refusing an order to torture a prisoner in a black site that officially did not exist. She had lost her career for having a conscience. Reese had pulled her out of a Syrian compound when the extraction went sideways and everyone else wanted to leave her behind. The window was closing. Every second of delay was another second of risk, but Reese had gone back anyway, had dragged Jenna through a kilometer of hostile territory with bullets snapping past their heads. Some debts could not be repaid, but they could be honored. Jenna walked into the shop like she owned it, her eyes sweeping the interior in one practiced glance. Exits, angles, threat assessment, Army intelligence habits die hard. Callahan, she said by way of greeting. Whitmore, thanks for coming. Jenna's gaze fell on the broken rifle. Something shifted in her expression. Anger, maybe, or grief. Who did this? 4 local thugs working for a bigger operation, arms trafficking. Jenna picked up a piece of the shattered stock, examining it. And you want to burn them down? I want evidence, among other things. Jenna set the piece down. Looked at Reese with those sharp, assessing eyes. Syria, you came back for me when you did not have to. You could have made the extraction window. You could have left me. You would have done the same. Maybe, maybe not. The point is, you did not leave me behind. Jenna closed her eyes briefly. So yeah, I am in. Whatever this is, I am in. The third vehicle arrived an hour later, a white Ford Explorer moving slowly up the highway. Doctor. Edmund Brennan climbed out carefully, favoring his left leg. 65 years old, white hair, weathered face, but his back was straight and his eyes were clear. He saw Reese and stopped on the threshold. Little bird, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Lord, You look just like him. Reese's throat tightened. Doc Brennan had been at her grandfather's funeral, had delivered the eulogy that made grown seals weep. Doc, it is good to see you. He came inside, looked at the broken rifle, and went very pale. Those sons of bitches. Reese brought him up to speed. When she got to the part about the poison, Doc sat down hard. I knew, he said quietly. Deep down, I knew. Billy was healthy as a horse. Never had heart trouble a day in his life. But the doctor said, the autopsy said, he shook his head. And who was I to argue? You were family, Reese said gently, and now we are going to get justice. The fourth arrival came at noon, a black Dodge Charger with government plates. Special Agent Nolan Cross, FBI. He showed his credentials at the door. Reese examined them carefully before letting him in. Miss Callahan, Commander Blackwood said you were assembling team. I am. She also said you were planning to insert yourself into an active federal investigation as a civilian operative with no authority and no backup. That is a pessimistic way of looking at it. Cross's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. I am FBI. Pessimism is in the job description. He looked around at the assembled group. And this is your team? A retired Marine sniper, a former intelligence officer, and a 65-year-old medic. That former intelligence officer, Jenna said coolly, refused an order to torture a prisoner. That is why I was discharged. Want to talk about your record, Agent Cross? Cross held up his hands. No disrespect intended. What you are working with, Reese said, stepping between them, is a team with more operational experience than your entire field office combined. What you are working with is your best shot at cracking this case. Cross studied her, really looked at her, taking in the set of her jaw, the steel in her eyes, the quiet confidence of someone who had faced death and walked away. Blackwood said you were DVRU, SEAL Team 6, that true? Was, past tense. Why did you leave? Not relevant to this operation. Reese stepped closer. Let me make something clear, Agent Cross. I am not under your command. I am doing this for my grandfather, and I am doing it the right way. But make no mistake, with or without FBI support, I am going after these people. The only question is whether you want to be part of taking down a major arms trafficking ring or explaining to your boss why you let a key asset walk away. The room was very quiet. Finally, Cross nodded. Fair enough, we do this your way. But I need to know the plan. All of it. Agreed on one condition. What is that? When we find out who killed my grandfather, I get 5 minutes alone with them before you make the arrest. Cross hesitated. 2 minutes. That is the best I can do. Reese extended her hand. Deal. They shook. They spent the next 3 hours planning. Jenna spread maps across the counter, overlaying them with satellite imagery from her intelligence contacts. They marked Dominic Brandt's known locations, his patterns, his weaknesses. The smart play, Jenna said, tracing a route on the map, is to let them come to you. Reese calls Dominic, says she is ready to sell. They set up a meeting. We wire Reese with audio and video. They will search her, Garrett pointed out. Not for weapons, maybe, but they are not stupid. They are not expecting high-tech surveillance either. Jenna pulled a small device from her bag, no bigger than a button. PS tracker/audio transmitter. Military grade. Can be sewn into clothing or embedded in a shoe heel. Range of 5 miles. Battery life of 72 hours. Cross leaned in. Where did you get that? I have friends in interesting places. That is not an answer. It is the only answer you are getting, Agent. Jenna's smile was dangerous. You want to solve this case or run a compliance audit? Cross wisely backed off. Okay, Reese said. So I meet with them, get audio of them discussing the land sale. Then what? Then we follow the money, Cross said. Track it, use it to identify bank accounts, shell companies, whoever is funding this operation. And if they pay in cash, no paper trail. That is where the GPS comes in, Jenna said. We tag the money itself, follow it, see where it goes. Doc spoke up. You are assuming they let her walk away. What if they do not? Everyone looked at Reese. Then I handle it. That is why I need Uncle Garrett on Overwatch. If things go sideways, he will have a clear shot. I do not like it, Garrett said. Too many variables. You have a better idea? He thought about it, finally shook his head. No, but I do not have to like it. Before they broke for the night, Garrett pulled Reese aside. We need to establish signals, he said quietly. If things go bad and you need me to take the shot, I need to know. Reese nodded. Simple, unmistakable. If you need me to shoot, touch your left ear. Just once. I will be watching through the scope the whole time. And if I need you to hold, right ear, but Reese, Garrett's face was grim. If someone has a gun pointed at your head and I have a clear shot, I am not waiting for permission. That is not negotiable. She looked at him for a long moment, saw the fear behind the steel, the love behind the discipline. That is fair. That is family. He pulled her into a brief, fierce hug. Your grandfather would be proud of you, little bird, but he would also tell you to be careful. So I am telling you for him. Doc walked over to Reese after Garrett left. His weathered hand touched her shoulder gently. Your grandfather talked about you all the time, you know. Even when you were deployed and he could not say where, he would get this look in his eyes. Pride and terror mixed together. He paused. When you find out the whole truth, because you will, remember that revenge and justice are not the same thing. One destroys you, the other sets you free. I know the difference. I hope so, because in about 24 hours, you are going to be tested in ways that would break most people. Reese made the call at 3 in the afternoon the next day. It rang twice. Miss Callahan. Dominic Brandt's voice was smooth, pleased, like a cat that had just cornered a mouse. I was hoping to hear from you. Reese took a breath, let fear creep into her voice, just enough to sound genuine. I will sell. You win. I do not want any trouble. Smart girl. I knew you would see reason. 50,000 cash, and you leave me alone. That is the deal. Where and when? Reese glanced at Cross, who nodded. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, Dusty Ridge Bar. Dominic chuckled. You do not trust me? I am hurt. Do we have a deal or not? We have a deal. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. Bring the deed. We will bring the money. He paused. And Miss Callahan, thank you for being reasonable. The line went dead. Reese set down the phone. It is done, 24 hours. The Dusty Ridge Bar sat on the eastern edge of town like a tombstone marking the death of better days. Faded neon, cracked parking lot, windows so dusty the sunlight came through brown. The kind of place where dreams came to die and secrets stayed buried. Reese pulled her truck into the lot at 7:45, 15 minutes early. She sat with the engine off, watching the last light drain from the skidaway. The tracker Jenna had sewn into her jacket lining felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The backup tracker in her boot heel pressed against her ankle. Her phone buzzed. Garrett. In position. I have eyes on you. 800 yards northwest, on a ridge overlooking the bar, Garrett Callahan lay prone in the desert scrub. His rifle, a Remington 700 PCR and .308 Winchester, rested on a bipod before him. Through the loopholed Mark 5 HD scope, he could count the buttons on anyone's shirt. Wind 4 miles per hour left to right. Temperature 68 degrees. Nevada desert at night. Perfect shooting conditions. Reese typed back. Copy that. Remember the signals. Left ear means shoot. Right ear means hold. I remember. Another buzz. Jenna, audio check. Reese coughed twice, then once. The prearranged signal. Jenna, clear as crystal. We are hearing everything. The door of the bar opened. Dominic Brandt stepped out, silhouetted against the yellow light inside. He saw her truck and raised a hand in greeting. Reese took one last breath, thought about her grandfather, about the rifle lying in pieces back at the shop, about 15 years of lies. She opened the door and stepped into the evening heat. Dominic met her halfway across the parking lot. He had dressed up, black button-down shirt, new jeans, expensive boots, like this was a date instead of extortion. Miss Callahan, punctual, I like that. Let us just get this over with. Straight to business, I respect that. He gestured to the bar. After you. The interior smelled like old beer and older cigarettes. A handful of locals hunched over drinks at the bar. The bartender barely glanced their way. Dominic led her to a back booth. Ox, Thorne, and Pike were already there. They had cleaned up too, but violence clung to them like cologne. Reese slid into the booth. The vinyl seat cracked under her weight. Drink? Dominic asked. No. Dominic shrugged, signaled the bartender anyway. Whiskey. 4 glasses. They waited in silence until the drinks arrived. Dominic raised his glass. To business. The others drank. Reese did not touch her glass. Dominic set his down. You brought the deed? Reese pulled an envelope from her jacket. Inside was the property deed to Callahan Armory, signed and notarized, real and legal, because Cross had insisted everything be legitimate. Dominic took it, examined it carefully, page by page. After a minute, he nodded. Looks good, Ox. The big man pulled out a metal briefcase, set it on the table, popped the latches. $50,000 in banded hundreds. The money gleamed under the bar's dim lights. Count it if you want, Dominic said. Reese did not move. I trust you. Smart answer. Because here is the thing, Miss Callahan. Dominic leaned forward, his voice dropping. This is just the beginning of a partnership. You sell us this property, you walk away clean. We are happy. But if you ever talk about this transaction to anyone, the cops, the feds, anyone, he paused, then we are not happy. And when we are not happy, bad things happen. Reese met his eyes, let fear show in hers, just enough. I understand. Do you? Because I get the feeling you are smarter than you look. Then Thorne spoke up. Boss, maybe we should search her. Make sure she is not wired. The booth went silent. Reese forced herself to breathe normally. You think I am working with the keys? Humor us, Dominic said. His eyes had gone cold. Ox. The big man stood up, massive, looming, his arms out like he was about to give a hug. Reese stood slowly, raised her arms. The tracker in her jacket felt like a spotlight, like a neon sign flashing secret across her chest. Ox's hands moved over her sides. Professional, thorough, looking for weapons, wires. Recording devices. He found her phone, checked it, handed it back, found her keys, her wallet, nothing else. The tracker in her jacket lining was too thin, too perfectly integrated. Jenna's work was flawless. Ox stepped back. She is clean. Reese exhaled slowly, sat back down. In her ear, silent to everyone else, Jenna's voice whispered through the bone conduction receiver hidden in her back molar. Good. Stay calm. Dominic relaxed. Sorry about that. Cannot be too careful. You understand. Your line of work, Reese repeated carefully, which is what exactly? Acquisitions. We acquire properties that have strategic value. Strategic value for what? Dominic smiled. That is not really your concern anymore, is it? You are selling, we are buying, transaction complete. He pushed the briefcase toward her. 50,000, as promised. Reese looked at the money, thought about grabbing it and running. Instead, she said, I have one question. What is that? This property, why is it so important? There are dozens of empty lots along Route 95. Why mine specifically? Dominic and his men exchanged glances. Something passed between them. Some silent communication. Like I said, strategic value, location, access roads. That is more than just wanting a good location. Reese leaned forward. You broke into my shop, destroyed something irreplaceable, threatened to burn down everything my grandfather built. That is personal. The booth had gone very still. Then a new voice spoke from behind her. She is not missing anything. She knows exactly what is happening here. Reese turned. A man stood at the edge of their booth. Late 60s, silver hair, wearing slacks and a polo shirt that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. He carried himself with the kind of authority that came from decades of command. On his collar, a small Medal of Honor lapel pin caught the bar's dim light, subtle enough to miss unless you knew what you were looking at. Reese's blood turned to ice. Colonel Randolph Mercer, the man said, extending his hand like they were at a cocktail party. Retired. You must be Reese Callahan. She did not take his hand. Could not. Her entire body had locked up because she knew that name, knew that face. She had seen him in old photographs, standing next to her grandfather at some military ceremony in the 90s. Both men in dress uniform, both smiling. Friends. They had been friends. Cat got your tongue? Mercer smiled at his own joke. Sorry, could not resist. He slid into the booth next to her. Gentlemen, give us the booth. Dominic and his crew did not argue. They grabbed their drinks and moved to the bar. Suddenly, Reese was alone with a man who might have ordered her grandfather's death. In her ear, Jenna's voice, "We are recording everything. Stay calm." Mercer gestured to the untouched whiskey glass. "You should drink. It helps with the nerves. And I can see you are nervous." "Who are you?" "I told you, Colonel Randolph Mercer. Though I suppose the better question is, how did I know your grandfather?" He picked up Dominic's abandoned glass, swirled the amber liquid thoughtfully. "William Callahan and I served together, off and on, for about 20 years. Good man, great soldier." He took a sip. "Rigid moral compass, though. Sometimes that is an asset, sometimes it is a liability." "He spoke about you." It was a lie, but Reese needed to see his reaction. "Did he?" Mercer looked pleased. "Nothing bad, I hope." "He said you were a hero. Your grandfather saved my life in Desert Storm." Mercer's voice softened, almost nostalgic. "We got pinned down by enemy fire near Basra. Republican Guard, dug in hard. My unit was getting slaughtered. Billy and his SEAL team came out of nowhere. Pulled me out. Killed 12 Iraqi soldiers in the process." He shook his head. "I put him up for a medal afterward. He refused it. Said he was just doing his job." His eyes met hers. That was Billy. No ego. Just duty. Reese's hands clenched under the table. "Why are you here?" "Because Dominic called me when you agreed to sell. Said something felt off about the whole thing. He is paranoid, but sometimes paranoia keeps you alive." Mercer studied her face. "I am here because I wanted to meet you, to make sure we understand each other." "Understand what?" "Your grandfather was a great man, but he made a mistake toward the end of his life. He saw something he should not have seen, came to conclusions he should not have come to." Mercer paused. "And then he did the worst possible thing. He tried to be a hero." The world narrowed to just this booth, this moment. "What did he see?" "That is classified." Mercer's smile did not reach his eyes. "Let us just say there are operations that happen in gray areas, operations that keep this country safe, but do not look good in newspapers. Billy found out about one of those operations. He did not understand the big picture. Did not understand that sometimes you have to break a few rules to protect the many. So you killed him." The words hung in the air like smoke. Mercer did not deny it, did not confirm it, just looked at her with those cold, calculating eyes. "Heart attack," he said softly. "Tragic. But he was getting old. These things happen." In her ear, "Holy shit. He is admitting it. Keep him talking." Reese forced herself to breathe. "Again. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand something, Miss Callahan. Your grandfather was a good man who made a bad choice. But you?" He leaned closer. "You have the chance to make the right choice. Take the money, sell the property, walk away, live your life. Do not make his mistakes. And if I do not, then you will find out that stubbornness runs in families, and so does tragedy." Mercer stood up. "Think about it. You have 24 hours to finalize the sale. After that, the offer expires, and other options become necessary." He walked away, back straight, head high, carrying himself like the war hero he had once been. Reese sat frozen. Dominic returned, sliding back into his seat. "Everything good?" "Who was that?" "That was the boss, the man who signs the checks." Dominic pushed the briefcase closer. "Take the money, Miss Callahan. Trust me. You do not want to disappoint him." Reese looked at the briefcase, at the money inside, at the four men watching her with predator eyes. She stood up, left the money on the table. "I need more time." "We gave you time." "I need more. This is my grandfather's legacy. I cannot just sign it away without being sure." Dominic's face darkened, but before he could respond, she continued, "I am not backing out. I just need one more day to say goodbye to the place, to make peace with it." The four men exchanged glances, some silent calculation. Finally, Dominic nodded. 24 hours. But Miss Callahan, this is your last extension. You do not show up tomorrow night with signed papers. We are done being nice." "I understand." Reese walked out on legs that felt like water. Back at the safe house, the team analyzed the recording. He basically admitted to killing William Callahan, Cross said, pacing. He mentioned classified operations, gray areas. He confirmed he is running this trafficking ring. But he was careful, Jenna added. Never said the actual words. A good lawyer could argue he was speaking hypothetically. So we need more, Reese said. We need a lot more. She stood up, walked to the window. Outside, the Nevada night stretched dark and endless. What if I do not just sell them the land? Garrett looked up. What do you mean? What if I offer to help? Tell them I want in. Tell them I am tired of being broke, tired of running a failing business. Cross shook his head. They will never believe you. Will they not? I am a 27-year-old woman running a gun shop in the desert. I have got skills they can use. I am ex-military, trained by one of the best SEALs who ever lived. She turned to face them. And most importantly, I am desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. It is too dangerous, Cross said. If they accept, you will be in the middle of a federal crime with no backup. That is where you are wrong, Reese pointed to Jenna. She can track me. You can have FBI positioned it nearby. And Uncle Garrett can be my guardian angel. Garrett did not answer right away. His face was a study in conflicting emotions. Finally, if we do this, we do it smart. Full surveillance, multiple backup plans, and at the first sign things are going wrong, we pull you out, non-negotiable. Agreed. Cross ran his hands through his hair. This is insane. My boss will never approve this. Then do not tell your boss until it is done, Jenna said. Sometimes it is easier to ask forgiveness than permission. Cross looked at Reese, really looked at her, saw the determination in her eyes, the grief, the rage carefully controlled and channeled into purpose. Your grandfather would hate this plan, he said. Probably I am. He would call it reckless, dangerous, stupid. Almost certainly. And then he would probably say the exact same thing I am about to say. Cross sighed. I am in, but we do this by the book. Every step documented, every conversation recorded, everything legal and clean. So when we bring these bastards down, they stay down. Reese made the second call at 3 in the afternoon the next day. Miss Callahan, please tell me you have good news. I want in. Silence on the line. Excuse me? I have been thinking about what Colonel Mercer said, about opportunities, about making smart choices. Reese let desperation creep into her voice. I do not want $50,000. I want a real job. I have got skills you can use. What kind of skills? I am ex-military, Navy. I know weapons. I know logistics. I know how to keep my mouth shut. She paused. And I know that what you are running through my land is not just a one-time thing. You need someone local, someone who knows the area, someone who can be trusted because they have just as much to lose as you do. More silence. Reese could practically hear Dominic thinking. That is an interesting proposal, he said slowly, but I would need to run it by the boss. Then run it by him. I will be at my shop. Call me back in 1 hour. She hung up before he could respond. 53 minutes later, her phone rang. The boss wants to meet you, tonight, 8 o'clock, but not at the bar. Where? I will text you the address. Come alone. Dominic's voice dropped. And Miss Callahan, the boss is very interested in your proposal. Do not disappoint him. The address came through 2 minutes later. An industrial complex 15 miles outside of town. Old mining operation, abandoned since the 90s. Perfect for storing illegal weapons away from prying eyes. This is it, Cross said, studying the satellite imagery Jenna had pulled up. This has to be where they are staging the shipment, which means if Reese goes in there, she will have enough evidence to bury them all. If she survives, Garrett said quietly. Reese looked at her uncle. I will, because I will have you watching my back. They spent the next 4 hours preparing. Jenna upgraded the tracker, adding a secondary beacon that would activate if Reese's heart rate spiked above 150 beats per minute. A panic signal. Cross positioned his FBI teams at 3 points around the complex. Ready to move on his signal, Doc went over trauma protocols one more time, just in case. And Garrett found his position, a ridge 1,200 yards north of the complex. Elevated, concealed, with clear sight lines to the main warehouse. He had made shots from longer distances, in worse conditions, but never with his niece's life on the line. Before Reese left, Garrett pulled her aside and pressed something into her hand. She looked down. It was a small piece of wood, the fragment from the broken Remington, the one with the engraving still visible. Break barriers, not promises. Carry him with you, Garrett said quietly. Let him give you strength. Reese tucked the fragment into her pocket, close to her heart. Thank you, Uncle Garrett, but this is my fight. I know, I am just here to make sure you get the chance to finish it. He paused. Remember the signals. Left ear, I shoot. Right ear, I hold. But if someone points a gun at your head, you do what you have to do. I trust you. Good. Now go get the bastard who killed my brother. At 7:30, Reese climbed into her truck. Remember, Cross said through the window, you are just selling them the land and offering your services. You are not law enforcement. You are not gathering evidence. You are just a desperate woman trying to survive. I know the part. And if anything feels wrong, anything at all, you abort, we come get you. I will be fine. The drive took 20 minutes. The industrial complex loomed out of the darkness like a monument to a dead industry. Rusted metal, broken windows, weeds growing through cracked concrete. 3 vehicles sat in the parking area. The black F350 she recognized from the shop. A Mercedes sedan, probably Mercer's, and a panel van with out-of-state plates. Reese pulled in next to them, killed the engine, took 3 deep breaths. Then she got out. Dominic emerged from the warehouse backlit by fluorescent lights inside. Miss Callahan, right on time. The boss appreciates punctuality. He led her inside. The warehouse was bigger than it looked from outside. Rows of metal shelving stretched into the darkness. But it was not empty. Far from it. Wooden crates, dozens of them, stenciled with military markings. Reese's training kicked in automatically, cataloging what she saw. M4A1 carbines, M249 squad automatic weapons, a T4 anti-tank weapons, fragmentation grenades, enough firepower to equip a small army, all of it stolen from Nellis Air Force Base. Colonel Randolph Mercer stood in the center of it all, hands clasped behind his back like he was inspecting troops. Miss Callahan, he said warmly, Dominic tells me you have a business proposal. Reese forced herself to look impressed rather than horrified. I had no idea the operation was this extensive. Most people do not. That is the point. Mercer walked toward her. Dominic says you want to work for us, that you have skills we could use. I do. Why should I trust you? Your grandfather was one of the most by-the-book men I ever met. How do I know you are not the same? This was the moment. The test. Reese looked Mercer dead in the eye. Because my grandfather died broke and forgotten. Because the system he served with honor and distinction let him rot with medical bills he could not pay. Because I watched him fade away while the people he had saved lived in mansions and drove fancy cars. The lie tasted like ash, but she sold it. I learned from his mistakes. Loyalty does not pay. Honor does not pay. Cash pays. Mercer studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled. Dominic, show her the shipment. But what happened next happened fast. Dominic stepped forward. But instead of leading Reese to the crates, he pulled a Sig Sauer 226 from behind his back and pointed it at her head. Or, Mercer said, his voice still calm and pleasant, we could talk about who you really are. Reese's blood went cold. Petty Officer First Class Reese Callahan. DevGru, SEAL Team 6, 2 tours in Syria, 3 in Afghanistan, Silver Star for Valor. Honorable discharge 2 years ago after your entire fire team was killed in a classified operation outside Damascus. Mercer shook his head slowly. You think we did not do our homework? You think we would let William Callahan's granddaughter waltz into our operation without checking every detail of her life? In her ear, Jenna's panicked voice, abort. Abort now, but Reese could not move. Dominic had the gun. Ox and Thorne and Pike had appeared from the shadows, also armed. I knew the moment Dominic told me about breaking the rifle, Mercer continued, because no normal person responds to that kind of violation the way you did. No tears, no panic, just cold calculation. His eyes narrowed. That is not a civilian response. That is a warrior's response. He walked closer. Reese could smell his cologne. Expensive. The kind that came in crystal bottles. So let me tell you how this is going to work. You are going to tell me who sent you. FBI, NCIS, CIA, and you are going to tell me what evidence you have gathered. He paused. And then we will see if you have any of your grandfather's honor, or if you are smart enough to beg for your life. 1,200 yards away, Garrett Callahan saw it all through his scope, saw the guns, saw Reese surrounded, saw his niece in mortal danger. His finger rested on the trigger. Wind 6 miles per hour northeast. Range 1,247 yards according to his rangefinder. Target, Dominic Brandt. Headshot would be instant. Center mass would be certain. Shoulder would disable, but keep him alive for testimony. He keyed his radio. I have shots, multiple targets, permission to engage. Cross's voice came back immediately. Negative, negative. We need them alive for testimony. FBI is moving in now. ETA, 3 minutes. She does not have 3 minutes. Stand by, that is an order. Garrett's jaw tightened. He watched through the scope as Dominic's finger moved toward the trigger. He had spent 30 years following orders, 30 years doing things by the book. And where had it gotten his brother? Dead. Poisoned by the very people he had served. He watched, waited, prayed for the signal. Inside the warehouse, Reese's mind raced. She could probably take Dominic, maybe Thorne, but not all four. Not with Mercer standing right there. And even if she could, running would blow the entire operation. She needed them to confess. She needed them to admit everything on record. So she made a choice. She laughed. You want to know who sent me? Her voice was steady, calm. The voice of a woman who had already accepted that she might not walk out of here alive. Nobody sent me. I came here on my own because you killed my grandfather. Because you poisoned him like a coward instead of facing him like a man. Mercer's expression did not change. Prove it. November 3rd, 2011. Master Chief William Callahan filed a report with NCIS about illegal weapons trafficking through Nellis Air Force Base. 2 weeks later, he died of an apparent heart attack. Except it was not a heart attack. It was digitalis poisoning, administered over the course of a week. Mimics cardiac arrest perfectly. She paused. The medical examiner knew. That is why he retired early and moved out of state, because you paid him off. Interesting theory, Mercer said, but theories are not proof. You are right, so let me give you proof. Reese reached into her pocket slowly, watching Dominic track the movement with his gun. I'm going to show you something. Do not shoot. She pulled out her phone, pulled up an audio file. Hit play. Mercer's own voice filled the warehouse. Your grandfather was a great man, but he made a mistake toward the end of his life. He saw something he should not have seen. Heart attack. Tragic. But he was getting old. These things happen. Mercer's face went very still. That is from last night, Reese said. At the Dusty Ridge bar. I was wearing a wire. We have everything. Your admission about my grandfather, your confirmation that you are running this operation. Dominic's threats. All of it. She looked at each of them in turn. And right now, 4 separate recording devices are transmitting this conversation to FBI servers. You are done. All of you. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Mercer started laughing, actually laughing. Brilliant, he said, absolutely brilliant. You walked into a meeting with a suspected arms dealer wearing a wire, recorded a confession, and you think that is admissible evidence? He shook his head. Any lawyer worth his retainer will have that thrown out before it reaches a judge. Entrapment, illegal surveillance, fruit of the poisonous tree. His smile faded. Billy raised you well. You have got courage. You have got brains. But you do not have a case. Maybe not, Reese said quietly. She reached into her other pocket, pulled out the fragment of wood from her grandfather's rifle. But I do not need a case. I just need the truth. And what I am going to do with the truth is make you pay for it. Mercer's face hardened. Dominic, killer. Dominic raised the gun, and Reese touched her left ear. 1,200 yards away, Garrett Callahan saw the signal. Left ear, shoot. He had been waiting for this moment. praying it would not come, knowing it would. "Forgive me, Billy," he whispered. He exhaled, squeezed the trigger. The .308 Winchester round traveled 1,247 yards in 1.4 seconds. It covered the distance at 2,750 feet per second, dropping exactly 47 inches due to gravity, drifting 8 inches left due to wind. It entered Dominic Brandt's shoulder, not the head, not center mass, the shoulder. Because Reese needed witnesses alive, because justice required testimony, because some things were more important than revenge. The sound of the shot reached the warehouse half a second after Dominic's gun clattered to the floor and he screamed in pain. Chaos. Ox and Thorne spun, looking for the shooter. Pike dove for cover. Mercer froze, and Reese moved. 6 years of SEAL training, 1,000 repetitions in combat, 100 times in actual firefights. Disarm, neutralize, control. She dropped low, swept Thorne's legs out from under him. He went down hard. His gun clattered across the concrete. Reese scooped it up, brought it around. FBI. Cross's voice boomed through a megaphone outside. This is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The warehouse is surrounded. Drop your weapons and come out with your hands up. Pike made the mistake of raising his gun toward the door. Garrett's second shot took him in the thigh. Non-lethal, precisely placed. He went down screaming. Ox ran for the back exit, made it 3 steps before the door burst open and FBI agents in full tactical gear swarmed in. Down, get down, hands where I can see them. In 10 seconds, it was over. Dominic face down on the concrete, agents on his back, blood pooling from his shoulder wound. Thorne being zip-tied, Pike screaming about his leg, Ox already in cuffs, and Colonel Randolph Mercer standing perfectly still in the center of it all. Hands raised, that slight smile still on his face. "Reese Callahan," he said calmly, "you just made the worst mistake of your life." "No." Reese lowered the gun, walked toward him slowly, deliberately. "You did, 15 years ago, when you killed my grandfather." She stopped directly in front of him, close enough to see the lines on his face, the coldness in his eyes, the Medal of Honor pin that he had no right to wear. "My grandfather saved your life. He pulled you out of that firefight in Basra. He killed 12 men to bring you home, and you repaid him by poisoning him like a dog." Mercer's smile flickered. He was going to destroy everything. Years of work, millions of dollars. He found out about the operation and he was going to report it. I gave him a chance to walk away. He refused. "So you murdered him?" "I eliminated a threat. There is a difference." Reese felt the rage building in her chest, the cold, dark thing that had been sleeping for 15 years, finally awake and hungry. She could kill him, right here, right now, put a bullet between his eyes and watch the light fade. No one would stop her, not in time. But then she heard her grandfather's voice, distant and clear, like he was standing right beside her. "Break barriers, not promises. Do it right. Do it with honor." She lowered the gun. "You are right," she said quietly. "There is a difference between murder and justice, between revenge and the law. My grandfather understood that. He lived by it, died by it." She held up the fragment of wood. The engraving caught the warehouse lights. "You think you won that day? You think eliminating him solved your problem. But you were wrong, because he raised me. He taught me everything he knew, and now I am going to watch you rot in prison for the rest of your miserable life." Cross entered with 6 agents behind him. "Colonel Randolph Mercer, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, arms trafficking, theft of government property, and a list of other charges I'm going to enjoy reading to you. You have the right to remain silent." As Cross cuffed him, Mercer looked at Reese one last time. "This will not stick. I have lawyers. I have connections. I will be out in 6 months. Maybe." Reese stepped closer, held the piece of wood in front of his face. "But you will never wear that medal again. And everyone will know what you really are." She dropped the fragment at his feet. "My grandfather kept his promises. He died with honor. You are just a man who breaks things. And now you are broken too." They led him away. 3 months later, the courtroom was packed. Reese sat in the front row, flanked by Garrett on one side and Doc Brennan on the other. Jenna sat behind them, taking notes. Cross stood near the prosecution table, arms crossed, watching. The judge read the verdict. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of second-degree murder in the death of Master Chief William Callahan, we find the defendant guilty. On 17 counts of arms trafficking, we find the defendant guilty. On theft of government property, it went on for 5 minutes. Guilty, guilty, guilty. When it was over, Colonel Randolph Mercer stood. His lawyer whispered something in his ear. Mercer ignored him. He looked directly at Reese. She looked back, did not flinch, did not look away. The defendant will be remanded to custody pending sentencing, the judge said. Given the severity of the crimes and the defendant's history of corruption, I am recommending life without possibility of parole. They let him out in shackles. The Medal of Honor that had hung in his office was now an FBI evidence lockup. It would be formally revoked next week. His name would be stricken from the rolls of honor. His legacy would be nothing but a cautionary tale. Dominic Brandt had taken a plea deal, 25 years in federal prison in exchange for testimony against Mercer. He would be an old man when he got out, if he got out at all. Ox Decker, Thorne Vickers, and Pike Jennings each received 15 to 20 years. The warehouse raid had yielded enough stolen military hardware to add weapons trafficking charges on top of the assault and conspiracy counts. The FBI dismantled the entire network over the following weeks. 18 arrests across 3 states. Millions of dollars in illegal weapons recovered. A pipeline that had been poisoning the country for years finally cut off at the source. But none of that mattered as much as the simple fact that justice had been done. William Callahan could rest now. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. Reese ignored them, walked past the cameras, past the microphones, past the people trying to make this into a story about justice and redemption in the American way. This was not about any of that. This was about a young woman who loved her grandfather, who refused to let his death be meaningless, who broke barriers and kept promises. They drove back to Callahan Armory in silence. The shop looked the same as it always had. Same faded paint, same dusty windows, same bell above the door. But inside, things were different. The broken pieces of her grandfather's rifle were gone. In their place, mounted on the wall in a place of honor, was a new Remington 700, custom-built, Brazilian walnut stock, dark and smooth. Loopholed scope, identical to the original in every way that mattered. The engraving on the receiver was new. She broke barriers and kept promises. In honor of Master Chief William Callahan, the Hawk, 1934 to 2011. Some legacies are worth fighting for. It had been a gift from DevGru, from the Navy, from the men and women who had served with her grandfather and understood what he had meant, what he had stood for. Reese ran her fingers over the engraving. He would love it, Garrett said softly behind her. I know. Doc appeared in the doorway carrying a small wooden box. Found something you should see. It was in his old footlocker, hidden under the false bottom. Inside the box were photographs, hundreds of them. Pictures of William Callahan through the decades. Young SEAL in training, hardened operator in combat zones, proud grandfather holding a baby girl. And at the bottom, a letter, sealed, addressed to Reese in her grandfather's handwriting. Her hands shook as she opened it. Little bird, if you are reading this, then I am gone. And if I am gone the way I think I am going to be gone, then it means I failed to stop something terrible. I have made a lot of mistakes in my life. Missed birthdays, missed holidays. Put the mission before the people I loved. But I never regretted my service. Never regretted trying to do the right thing, even when it was hard. There is something happening at Nellis, something wrong. I have reported it. I have done everything by the book. But I do not think the book is going to protect me this time. If something happens to me, I need you to know it was not an accident. It was not just my time. Someone will try to make it look that way. But you are smart. You will figure it out. And when you do, I need you to promise me something. Do not become like them. Do not let anger and revenge turn you into the thing you are fighting against. Do it right. Do it legal. Do it with honor. Break barriers, but keep your promises. I love you, little bird. I am proud of you. I always will be, Grandpa. Reese read it 3 times. The first time, the words blurred through tears she did not try to stop. The second time, she heard his voice, that calm, steady voice that had taught her to shoot, to fight, to survive. That had told her bedtime stories when she was small and war stories when she was old enough to understand. The third time, she understood. He had known. He had known they were coming for him, and he had faced it the same way he had faced everything else in his life, with courage, with honor, with his eyes open. She folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope, pressed it against her chest for a moment, then tucked it into her pocket next to her heart. He knew, she said quietly. He knew they were going to kill him. And he still reported it, Garrett said. His voice was rough. Still tried to do the right thing. That is who Billy was, Doc added. His eyes were wet, but he was smiling. The stubbornest, most honorable son of a bitch I ever met. Reese laughed. A small sound, but real. Yeah, he was. She looked at the new rifle on the wall, at the engraving, at the promise literally carved in wood. She had kept it. She had done it right. She had done it with honor. And somewhere she knew her grandfather was smiling. Garrett was the last to leave. He stood in the doorway of the shop, looking back at Reese. The evening sun caught his face, turning the silver at his temples to gold. What are you going to do now? He asked. Reese thought about it, thought about the offers that had come in, the book deals, the movie rights, the job offers from private security firms who wanted her skills and her story. She had turned them all down. I'm going to run the shop, she said, just like Grandpa did. Serve the community, teach people to shoot, do things the right way. That is it? That is everything. She walked over to him. He spent his whole life serving, fighting, bleeding for a country that did not always appreciate it. This shop was his dream, his way of giving back even after he retired. She paused. I am not going to let that die. Garrett smiled. It was a real smile this time. Warm, proud. You sound just like him. Good. He pulled her into a hug, held her tight for a long moment. I will be back next month, he said. We can go shooting. Like old times. I would like that. He walked to his truck, opened the door, looked back one more time. He would be proud of you, little bird. More than you know. Then he was gone, the Silverado disappearing down Route 95, kicking up a trail of dust that glowed orange in the fading light. Reese stood alone in the shop as darkness fell. She walked to the new rifle, lifted it from the rack, felt its weight settle into her hands. Through the window, the Nevada desert stretched endless and eternal. The same desert her grandfather had looked at for 30 years. The same sky, the same silence. She thought about everything that had happened. The broken rifle, the shattered memories, the truth that had been buried for 15 years. She thought about Mercer rotting in a cell somewhere, about Dominic and his crew paying for their crimes, about the network that had been dismantled, the weapons that would never reach the wrong hands. She thought about her grandfather, about his life, his service, his sacrifice, and she thought about the promise she had made, sitting in the dark with the pieces of his rifle in her hands. I am going to find out who killed you, Grandpa, and I am going to make them pay, the right way, the way you taught me. She had kept that promise. Now it was time to keep the other one, the one carved into the wood of his rifle, the one that had guided him through 30 years of service and would guide her through whatever came next. Break barriers, keep promises. She set the rifle back on its rack, walked to the door, turned off the lights. Tomorrow she would open the shop at 7 sharp. The bell would chime. The sun would rise over the eastern hills. Life would go on, because some legacies were worth fighting for. Some barriers were worth breaking, and some promises were worth keeping. Always. The end.